One last question that kind of relates to all this, but a few times recently, maybe during the press scrum, we've heard Tony Khan talk about his feeling based on wrestling history, or at least his interpretation of wrestling history. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but just to be clear, you'll specify if it's true or not. But that conflict's a good thing. Having conflict between some of the top guys can produce good matches, can produce good promos, can produce good wrestling TV. There have been examples of it in the past, and sometimes it goes too far, like Brett and Shawn. But when things weren't too bad, that conflict may have created some magic. It's always been said that maybe Vince McMahon pitted some guys against each other to see what would happen and produce something out of that. Tony's saying it here, and of course this happened. This is not what Tony wanted, for sure. What are your thoughts on the idea of, as a booker or a promoter, not doing anything to end conflict, if anything, maybe pushing it forward a little bit, hoping that you get something out of it for your personal gain? Or for your company's gain, I should specify.
Yeah. Vince was bad with that. Vince loved to see, because he wanted people to constantly be trying to outdo each other. He wanted to make it somewhat personal between people so that they would outproduce the other guy. But it wouldn't be taken to the point of fucking, I hate this motherfucker and I want to fucking throttle him and squeeze his neck until his britches are full or whatever.
I mean, he booked, if you look at Survivor Series 88, in that Survivor Series tag team match, he booked the Bulldogs and the Rougeaus to work with each other in that match after everything that happened. I mean, there's a great example of it.
But that's what I'm saying. Vince liked that both with the boys and with his office personnel. You know, keep them on their toes and keep them, you know. And that's there's a difference between professional jealousy and a professional rivalry and I hate this motherfucker. Lawler and Dundee had professional rivalry and professional jealousy. They were number one and number two. And they were that way for a long time. And both of them had an incredible base of fans that thought that they were the guy. But Lawler had the upper hand in terms of being over, and Dundee was the harder worker. Dundee'd be at the office, or he'd do the booking, and he'd sweat on it. Lawler's always taking it easy. But they worked together and had the best matches because they still respected each other. Dundee didn't like Lawler's playing his fucking record on the car stereo when they would ride together, if they ever did. And, you know, Lawler would roll his eyes at shit Dundee would do or whatever the fuck, but they respected each other. If you've got guys that don't like each other personally, maybe, but there's professional respect, you can use that, and everybody tries to outdo the other guy. In other words, it's permissible if you're trying to outwork the other guy in the ring, or outperform or outdraw or outtalk or whatever. I'll show you, motherfucker. But when you hate some son of a bitch so bad that y'all are actually going to have real fights or not be able to cooperate in promos or in angles like Brett and Shawn sometimes did, and holding shit up or whatever, that's when it goes too far. So, yes, Vince probably, in a variety of occasions, took it too far, but a lot of the old-time promoters, they wanted some element of saltiness amongst the guys that they were booking against each other because the fans could tell it. And also, they didn't want the boys to be too united, because then there was trouble for the promoter in one way or another. Are they all going to stand up and want more money? Or if my top one or two guys are strong enough and they get 3 or 4 more guys with them, are they going to try to take my territory over? And most of the time that didn't lead to somebody taking the territory from the experienced promoter. That just led to the fucking territory going to shit and everybody losing out, a la Knoxville. So, yes, there should be professional rivalry and a little professional jealousy and some one-upsmanship going on and a little edge to things, but it can't get this far and have shit like this going on, or then you've got a big bowl of shit.
Well, Jim, obviously there's a lot going on here. The investigation, maybe multiple investigations, maybe lawsuits. I would have to think that if you were a wrestler and you were in the middle of all this, you would need an attorney who knows wrestling almost as well as he knows the law, and he knows the law as well as anyone.
Well, I will agree with you, and the only person I can think of who can possibly apply wrestling knowledge to the law or legal knowledge to wrestling is the man, the myth, the legend himself, the leader, the consigliere of the cult of Cornette.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Those are the rest.
And you know, that's the thing, Brian, is that a lot of courts in this nation, they've got attorneys in them that may know the law, but they don't know professional wrestling. What's going to happen when this ragtag band of merry misfits comes into a courtroom and starts testifying and speechifying about all the things that happened that we've been talking about? Well, this guy threw a chair, and this guy handed off the dog, and this guy tried to double-cross this guy on live television. Nobody would understand that, but a man who's not only well-versed in the legal jurisprudence system, but also a man who's well-versed in the terminology and or the habits of the average professional wrestler. And, of course, that is Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. But you say, hey, Jim, I'm not a wrestler. I just need help with my legal problem. I have been terminated wrongfully. There was no evidence that I committed sodomy with the boss's wife in the back seat of a car while his Dalmatian was driving. No evidence whatsoever, but yet I was fired over that very self-same thing. Now you've got recourse, ladies and gentlemen. You don't just have to call a trainer for that Dalmatian. You can call a lawyer. And let's say, for example, you've been poisoned. Brian, this happens often. You're walking down the street, and some guy comes up, grabs you by the back of the hair, and sticks poison down your throat. Well, this happens regularly all across America.
Where?
Actually, not in that way.
No.
They force the poison into you by polluting your groundwater and polluting your food. That's the way they do it, but it's the same thing if they were just snatching you by the head and shoving that poison in your face. Well, who can get even? Stephen P. New. He's taken many of these major companies to task for poisoning groundwater, poisoning food, poisoning the sustenance that the people need to stay alive and live healthy lives. So if you've got fired, if you've got poisoned, if you got run over, if you were given defective merchandise that led to some injury that you sustained, like the bad earplugs they gave our service members, and of course, we know now that Stephen P. New is taking up the banner of fighting against evil mismanagement of power companies. They got problems with those power companies, the utilities, the public servants down in Texas. He's headed down that way. He's got cases going now in, 10 or 12 American states, more on the way. He's jumping around. He's covering the world like Sherwin-Williams, folks. And again, he can do the same thing for you. If you'd like to get paid back for some indiscretion that has been foisted on you by one of these greedy corporations, Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. As a matter of fact, I have it on good authority. Punk has an attorney, but Larry has never been involved in a legal situation before, so he is retaining Stephen P. New.